I just love the praise team, they just bring so much to the worship service, and I just can't say it enough. This church is just incredible, growing, and I'm just so pleased that I can be a part of it in some way. Are there any visitors here today? Any visitors? Okay, maybe not. I was going to just say welcome home, because this can certainly be your new home. We've got baptisms going on. We've got people coming in on profession of faith, and I'm just really, really excited. Today's message is family ambassadors. Now, I texted Pastor Ray kind of at the last minute and said, hey, I know we talked about doing another message this week. Is it okay if I switch it up? Because I've really felt for the past 2 weeks that this has just started to come to me. And it was at the last minute. The bulletins had been printed, and so he said, well, yeah, sure, that's fine. You're fine. I'm glad he trusts me, but at the same time, I felt really guilty because, okay, I didn't want to have to go back in and reprint all the bulletins, especially after Donna did such a nice job on the front end of that with the beautiful picture. Let me ask you, who is your family? When I ask you about who is your family, who do you think of? What do you think of? Your children? Hold off on those slides for just a minute. Hold off on those slides. When you think of your family, do you think of your children, your husband, your wife, spouse? Well, if I think of family, I say kind of which one? Because I'm the son of Doug Cross, a pastor, and my mom, and she was a nurse. I'm the brother to 3 much older sisters. I have extended family of cousins. So when you say family, if you're like me, I tend to think of, okay, Susan, Robert, and Derek, they're family. I don't think about the in-laws and outlaws that are out there in the family, the extended family. Kids, I know Pastor Ray loves to have you draw things and give to him. So today, I would like you to draw a picture of your family. Of your family as you see it. Today's message is about 2 things. One, obviously, is family, because that's in the title. The other is about ambassadors, but really it's about the impact and influence that we have on other people. We are a composite of our mom and dad and all of the family that goes into that. But we're more than just that. We are also a composite of other people that are in our lives, because we start to adapt and listen and learn and start to actually, you view their points and work with them. And I can tell you, when I dated in college a girl from England, I actually came away after staying at her parents' house for the weekend. I started talking like David Land. It's a really cool accent. I like it. But we also know that we have other people have influence and impact on us. In 1993, for those of you that can think back, for those of you that are too young, you can Google it. Charles Barkley, who was a basketball player, very well known, one of the top performers in his sport at the time, he made a commercial with Nike. And his commercial said, "I am not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I'm not a role model. Your kids or your parents should be your role model." Now, there are a couple of things that he got right in that. He got right that the parents should be the role model. He got right that he wasn't getting paid to be a role model. He was getting paid to play basketball. But too often, we look up, and I look up to the ball players that were during my time, and I'm like, oh, I'd like to be like them, right? Well, Charles Barkley said, "I'm not a role model." Now, you had another basketball player who got a little irritated. Now, social media wasn't as big back then as it is now, because now you just lash out, right? Just like, oh, what do you mean you're not? But Karl Malone actually was another superstar. And he came out and he said, "You're wrong." He said, "We don't choose to be role models. We are chosen. Our only choice is whether to be a good role model or a bad one." That is so profound to me. It really is. Thinking about it, that when we look at other people, whether it's sports figures, whether it's whoever, Kardashians too, right? Anybody, we look at them and we're like, they're so good. No. The role models are not something that we need to mimic after. We need to look after Christ. We're going to talk a little bit about family. Turn to the person on your right and say, you are part of my family. I'm so glad you're here. Can you do that? Okay, now turn to the person on your left and say, I'm glad there's no family resemblance. All right? I'm glad there's no family resemblance. Family. You cannot control the family that you were born into. You were born. You're part of that family. But we can control who we allow to influence us in our lives. Now let's take a look at a family resemblance. The slides. There you go. So here you see a nice family. There's two little girls there, and then up there is an older sister and an older brother. There's a resemblance there. On the next slide, they start to grow up. So you still see the resemblance, but they each start taking on their own personality. The girl in the blue dress, her eyes just say that she's full of mischief. They really do, I mean, when you look at it. But you still don't know who the parents are. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, so who do they take their looks from? So on the next slide, you will see the mother, the father, and then the kids grown up. Charlie, the guy with the long beard, he was actually the director of the Los Alamos nuclear labs for a while. The father up there was my father-in-law, and his eyes, blue eyes, could cut right through you. And when I would go over to their house on Sabbath, and he would ask me these really deep questions, and I just prayed that I either got the answer right or that I fooled him into thinking it was right. So, family. We have a family resemblance, but we're a composite made up of other people as well. We grow, we discover more about ourselves. Parents, we try to teach our kids the right way, but when they grow up, unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, they get a mind of their own. Some grow up to be model citizens. Others grow up to be model opportunity areas. But each one of us, whether in our family or whether in our parents' family, we had personal responsibilities, right? We had some responsibilities. So mine was I had to help wash the dishes. My sister Sally's was she got to sit at the table and eat all the rest of the food, and she really liked it. But eventually we grow and we start a new family and an extended family. And we then get the chance to raise our kids like we think we should have been raised. I was talking with Alice after the first service, and she said, you know, Doug, I don't know if I ever taught my kids how to love Jesus. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I fall into that boat. I don't think I taught my kids how to love Jesus. Now, don't misunderstand me. We come to church. We read the Bible. We have morning watch. We say, you know, the seventh day is the Sabbath, and you don't want to do that. Avoid these things because they're bad. But our children, I don't remember saying, let me show you what God's love is all about. Develop that relationship with Him, because it's your personal relationship that will carry you through. I had a pastor one time tell me that when you get out on your own, Doug, you're going to have to re-accept God on your and His terms. It's very true. We have to develop that relationship, or we won't be going to church anymore. And it really hurts me that I see kids that grow up, that they love Christ, but somehow that relationship isn't there. Christ wants us to have that family relationship. And now I've got a burden on my heart that Alice put there, and I'm going to go back to my kids and tell them, I'm sorry. I missed the opportunity, but I'm not going to miss it again. When we talk about families, the church is a family. The church is a family of like believers that come together and we worship together. My wife told me that my work was a family because I often spent more time at the office than back at home. So for some of us, that's true. And really, that's not necessarily a bad thing because you care about people at work. Jesus started his mission, and he said in Matthew 12:48, "Who is my mother and brother?" And he stretched out his hand and he says, "These are my mother's brothers and sisters." And Gary reminded me out in the hall that that was the first time that he declared his humanity. He was human. He did not say his father was out there because he was in heaven. So he declared his humanity on that. At first I thought, that's kind of dissing your family. I mean, your mom and your brother. But then I realized that Jesus was setting the example for me and for us. Because, see, if we limit our thoughts as to who our family is, we miss out on a great opportunity to learn from other people, to have experiences that we may never experience, to listen to their experiences, which will help us to get through some of ours. In short, when we share our experiences with each other, we become a family. The more you know, the more you grow, and the stronger the family gets. Now I'm going to transition to ambassadors, because how does ambassadors play in all this? Well, as a family member, when I walk out, somebody's going to eventually look at Robert and say, "Oh, your dad is so-and-so," right? Am I a good ambassador for the family? Do I represent them well? Now, I just came back. How many of you have been to conferences? How many of you have been to conferences? Can I just see a lot of people? So conferences, there's a lot of people at the conferences, right? And you walk in, and I don't know conferences that you go to, but I was at a conference a week ago. It was at a John Maxwell conference, and there were about 2,200, 2,300 people. Okay, we all get together, and it's very, very happy. And at the conference, they hand out name badges, right? So at the John Maxwell conference, leadership conference, they have different color lanyards. So the first lanyard that you'll see is a white lanyard. Those are all newbies, right? That kind of reminds me of people coming into the church. They're learning about it. They're getting in touch with God. Newbies, white. So those who have been there a little bit longer, who are in mentorship, they wear a black lanyard, and it says mentorship. And so when you're talking with them, you listen to them, and this is how they do different things. And then there are others with the blue lanyard that's an executive director, and man, they've been at this for years, and they've invested a lot in what they're learning. And then you have a team ambassador, which is basically a director with a red badge. This was my first year that I was a team ambassador. I got my name, Doug Cross, right there. I'm really excited about that. Live to lead. All team ambassadors are, and I realize this kind of clashes, so I'll take it off. All team ambassadors is we're there to help everybody. Okay? So for instance, lunch is around here. I was in the Live to Lead booth. Over my head was a big Live to Lead sign, and I had probably 50 or 60 people come up and say, "Is this registration?" Now, the bad side of me wanted to say, "Are you blind? Can you not see?" My more human side was, "Hey, look, no, but it's right down that way," to direct them. But the thing that I learned about ambassadors last week, and it really, really, really hit home, is that ambassadors are looked at as experts. They're looked at as experts. It's like, if you're an ambassador, you must know a lot. And when I would go down to breakfast or lunch with all the people, 2,200 people, I'd sit at a table and I'd look and I'd say, "Okay, you're new. What do you think about this? Are you learning a lot? Do you like the speakers?" I mean, Deion Sanders was there. How can you not like him? He's just a phenomenal speaker. But when you're talking to him, it's like, I'm drinking from a fire hose. Isn't that the way kind of people coming in and learning about Christ are when they first start? They're passionate. They're like, "I want to learn more. I want to learn more." And then there's so much to learn, and it's like, wow. It's all about God's love. And when you're sitting there and you're talking and you're saying, how are you using these principles? How has John Maxwell's faith helped you and inspire you? You hear all these different stories, and it's absolutely incredible. John has what he calls his faith service, and he says it's optional. He says, I'm a Christian. I love God. If you're atheist, I still love you. I value you because God made you, whether you believe it or not. And he says, you don't have to go to this. And I will tell you this, that if not 100%, it's 99% of the people go to the faith service. And people come from all over the world. They come from Islam, people who are Islam, Muslims. There are people who are Buddhists there. They come and they go in and they listen to the message, to the sermon that John has. And it is incredible. And at the end, he always asks people, if you want to renew your relationship with Christ or start a new one, please come down. And I will tell you, every single conference I've been to, there's usually about 500 people that come down. It's incredible. It's incredible that you have this big audience from all different areas and facets of life. And yet the ambassador that John puts on helps to move them and helps to get them to Jesus. When I look at the ambassadors in the Bible, I look at Noah, who represented God's righteousness to unbelievers. He represented the way to be saved, and only 7 people were in the ark. When I look at Moses proclaimed God's power and justice in Pharaoh's court. Joshua showed the might and strength of the Lord before the Canaanites. All of these people in the Bible were ambassadors. So what is an ambassador? An ambassador is simply someone that represents another. Now, when you look at ambassadors in politics, in the political arena, and ambassadors in general, the highest authority in the land appoints ambassadors. So in this country, it's the president. In other countries, it might be the premier or somebody else, but they are the ones that select and appoint the ambassadors. And with being ambassador, they are given all authority and power to act on the country's behalf. Now, they're not going to, go and set new policies, but what they are is if a country wants something, they talk to the ambassador. The ambassador can either approve it or go up the chain of command. But they are given all power and authority. With Christ, as soon as we are reconciled to Him, as soon as we give our life to Him, whether you're a newbie or somebody who has roots going back to Ellen White and going back to the Great Disappointment, you are an ambassador by default. Because people see and they know you and your life has changed and they say, what's changed? And you say, I'm a Christian. Guess what? That means you're an ambassador. It is not an option. We don't have to wait for a certain level. We are all ambassadors. We can't take the position of Charles Barkley and say, I'm not a mentor. We can't say, I'm not an ambassador. Because when people associate you with Jesus, they are looking at you and wanting to see how you respond to a lot of things, a lot of vitriol that's in social media. How do you respond? We do not have that option. We are by default a representative for Christ. Now, here's something if we look in Matthew further, Matthew 28:18, Jesus came back to his disciples. You recall this, he comes back to his disciples, and he said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Not some authority, not all authority in heaven has been given to me. He said all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And then what does he say? He tells them to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, which is to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. When we know Christ and we accept Him as our personal Savior, we cannot sit back and say somebody else will do it. Somebody else will do it. You see, this week while I was here, I helped Donna with the cross out in the foyer out there and the crown of thorns, and I looked and I thought, man, my problems are very small compared to what Jesus went through for me on the cross. I would not have a crown of thorns put on my head for me for anything. I don't care how much well, maybe if you pay me enough, but I would not die for me. Literally. I mean, can you think of anybody else that would do this? And when we get to know that, and when we get to understand that he wants us to show his love to everybody, and that he didn't just die for the people who were in power, he didn't just die for people who were really, really good. That's what we need to be telling people. That's what we need to be showing people. When people say, well, you need to do things to make sure that you stay right with God. And growing up as a kid, I used to think, what if I get hit by a bus and I haven't asked God for forgiveness for my latest sins that I did that morning? I mean, that was as a kid. And we sometimes get that feeling. But you know what? God knows our heart. He knows our heart. And so, like David did a lot of things wrong. God knew his heart. But here we are, too many Christians, they kind of go out there and they say, you're doing this wrong, you're not doing this right, you need to do blah, 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 X, Y, Z, and ABC. They just add to the vitriol that's out there. They stoop to the level of the devil instead of rising to the higher calling from Christ. We are his ambassadors. And when people say you have to do things, I say, point to the thief on the cross. The only thing he did is say, please remember me. Please remember me. And the people looking down below who he wronged, they're like, is this really possible? Wow. We're ambassadors. But wait, there's more. Just when you thought it was over, it's like a commercial. Wait, if you order now, you get more. Here's more. In John 14, 12 to 14, Jesus tells his disciples, and get this, because when I started to connect this, I got chills. I really got goosebumps. John 14, 12 and 14, he says, very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. So I'm sitting there saying, wait. Did Jesus just say I was going to do greater things than him? Did he really say that? I mean, I'm not going to die on the cross. But what Jesus was saying is, through me, all things are possible. People will do greater things, whatever that greater things are. But you know what? When people do those, they're so big, they know that person can't possibly be doing it. It's Christ through them that are accomplishing the incredible things. I just still can't imagine that I'll do better things, right? I don't know what that looks like. I only hope that when that happens, if it happens, if Christ works through me, that God will smile and say it's to his honor and glory. I'll say this, I don't know why Jesus would trust me as his ambassador. I really don't. I don't deserve it. It's nothing like I would ask for it, but he does. And because he believes in me, and I trust him, and I know that he will help, through me, impact people's lives, I'm ready to go. He has so much belief and confidence in me to accomplish great things to his glory. Who am I to say no? Just as he uses Moses, Joshua, Elisha, Peter, Paul, as he used Ruth, Naomi, and Esther, three extremely brave women who defied all odds in society and actually took a step that was a huge risk. If he trusted them to be the ambassadors, then who am I to say no? I figure, look at what he did with David. David had a heart after God. But you know what? David was, far from perfect. So if he made David king, I think Christ can make me something that I'm not capable of imagining. Jesus found value in David. He found value in all of us. I believe that Jesus' word is his bond. I really do. People will see us do great things because of Christ and know that the great things that we do are so big, it's only because of Christ, because we couldn't do it on our own. We are his children, his family. and his ambassadors. With the so many Christian ambassadors that don't necessarily bring Christ's love and his redemption to others, I ask myself, what kind of an ambassador am I? And I'll tell you, some days it is tough to be a good ambassador. Sometimes people just rub you the wrong way, and that's when you got to take a step back and say, wait a minute, I'm an ambassador for Christ. I don't have to wear this. People see it. People know me. If they don't know me, they see how I act and they find out he's a Christian. You don't have to wait. You are an ambassador. We don't have to identify people in any way other than they are somebody that God created, he values them, and we value them. I always try to remember that it's not by my power but God's and Christ, because he paid the price for me that I would not pay for myself. That is what saves me. When Jesus comes, I'm so looking forward to seeing his face. I'm just looking forward to seeing him come in the clouds. I want to hear him say these words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." I want to hear him say, "Welcome home. You're part of my family, and I've got you coming to the biggest reunion ever." Shall we bow our heads for prayer? Dear Jesus, thank you again for bringing us together today. And Lord, as we leave here, I ask that you please help us to be the type of people, the type of ambassadors for you that you want us to be and that we can be through your power, for your honor and glory. Please bless us now, Lord, and may we see each other next week when we come back to fellowship with our church family again. In your name I ask, amen.